Okay, let's just dive right in. We have all been in that reading, right? The post-incident meeting. It's that tense, really awkward get-together after something's gone sideways, and you can just feel the unspoken blame in the air. Everybody's just looking for an escape hatch. Honestly, it's often more painful than the incident itself. But what if we could totally transform that conversation? Turn it from something we all dread into an absolute powerhouse of learning? Well, that's exactly what we're going to get into today. This really gets to the heart of it all. Firing the person who made a mistake, it doesn't actually make your system any more reliable. All it does is shrink your team, and worse, it teaches everyone else to hide their mistakes. What this really tells us is that we have to move past blame if we're serious about building stronger, more resilient systems. So let's paint the picture. An incident happens. You all pile into a room, maybe it's virtual, maybe it's physical, and there is this massive pressure to find a quick fix. Just assign some action items and move on as fast as possible. It's a total pressure cooker. And the real goal, which should be learning, it just gets completely steamrolled. And this rush to action, that's the core of the problem. We get so hyper-focused on, okay, what are we going to do about it, that we completely blow past the most important question: what actually happened here? When we jump straight to solutions, we're basically building our fixes on this shaky foundation of not really understanding the problem. And that pretty much guarantees we're going to make the same mistakes all over again. So to break this cycle, we need a whole new framework. And this isn't just about tweaking a meeting agenda. It's a fundamental mindset shift. The goal of a post-incident review isn't to find a scapegoat or even just to fix the one thing that broke. The real prize here is learning. Deep, systemic learning. And check this out. The solution here is so simple, it's brilliant. Instead of one frantic, chaotic meeting, you hold two. The first meeting is dedicated only to understanding the timeline of events. That's it. No action items, no solutions, just figuring out what happened. Then the second meeting, maybe the next day, is for planning. This separation is absolutely crucial. It gives everyone's brain some breathing room and ensures you're not trying to fix a problem you don't even fully get yet. It's amazing how a single whir can change everything. When you ask why, it almost instinctively puts people on the defensive. It feels like you're hunting for a single root cause, which usually ends up being a person. But if you switch to asking how or what happened, it keeps you in this investigative, curious mode. It opens the conversation right up, encourages people to share details, and keeps the focus on the sequence of events, not on a diagnosis. All right, so now that we've got the framework, let's get into the nitty-gritty. This next section is basically a toolkit for spotting and dodging the 5 most common traps that derail these conversations and kill any chance of real learning. And trust me, once you see these, you are going to start noticing them everywhere. First up, the biggest and most common trap of all, slapping the label human error on something and calling it a day. Yeah, maybe a person pushed the wrong button, but stopping there? That's a dead end. It just shuts down all curiosity and stops you from finding the real systemic issues that made that error not just possible, but maybe even inevitable. So the fix is to treat human error not as the conclusion, but as the starting line for the real investigation. We have to work from the assumption that the person thought they were making the best decision they could. So, what information were they missing? What pressures were they feeling? How did our system, our tools, our processes, how did they fail that person in that moment? That's where the gold is. Okay, trap number 2 is what we call counterfactuals. You hear this all the time. The engineer should have reverted the change, or they failed to check the logs. The problem is, these should have and could have statements are describing a fantasy world. They're a complete distraction from the really hard work of understanding what actually did happen. And that's the fix right there. It takes real discipline to stick to the messy reality of what happened, instead of retreating into a simple story of what you wish had happened. So instead of exploring what someone could have done, dig into what they did do, and the context that made that action make perfect sense to them at the time. This next trap is a close cousin to the last one. It's using those little judgmental adverbs, like saying someone acted hastily or carelessly. When we say that, we're judging their past actions with the benefit of our perfect hindsight. We know how the story ends, but the person in the thick of it, they didn't have that luxury. It's totally unfair, and it just shuts down our ability to understand their decision-making process. So the fix requires us to be mental time travelers. You've got to put yourself in that person's shoes during the incident. What did their dashboard look like? What alerts were firing? What did they actually know at that moment? By trying to reconstruct their context, we move from a place of judgment to a place of genuine understanding. I absolutely love the name for this one, the Scooby-Doo fallacy. This is the trap of seeing humans as these chaotic agents who come in and break our otherwise perfect, beautiful machines. It's this idea that, if only people didn't touch anything, everything would be fine. But that view completely ignores a fundamental, massive truth about complex systems. And that truth is that humans are the source of resilience. They have this incredible adaptive capacity. They're the ones keeping these ridiculously complex systems running day in and day out. They aren't the problem. They're an essential part of the solution. So instead of pointing fingers, the fix is to ask, how can we better support the people who are constantly adapting to keep this whole thing afloat? And our final trap is maybe the most subtle one. We are just so conditioned to focus on failure, on what went wrong, that we completely ignore everything that went right. We almost never stop to ask what worked during an incident, or what amazing thing someone did that stopped it from being 10 times worse. And this blinds us to some of our biggest learning opportunities. This is a pretty mind-blowing concept when you think about it. You can often learn more about preventing failure by studying success. By asking what went right, you start to uncover all the hidden strengths and resilience that are already baked into your system. And then you can work on amplifying those strengths, which is way more powerful than just patching up the latest hole. So, all of these tactics we've talked about, avoiding blame, asking how, focusing on context, they all feed into this much bigger, more powerful idea: building true organizational resilience. And this isn't just about bouncing back from failure. It's about fundamentally changing the way we see and interact with our own systems. This is the formal definition from the field of resilience engineering. And I want you to notice those key words: inevitable surprises. It starts with the acceptance that failure and unexpected events are just a given in complex systems. So the goal, then, isn't to prevent all failures, because that's impossible. It's to build the capacity to adapt and respond effectively when they do happen. And this table is fascinating because it breaks resilience down into these different capabilities. Most of us just think about rebound, how quickly we get back to normal after a problem. But look deeper. There's robustness. That's how a system handles stress without cracking. Then there's graceful extensibility. Think of that as how a system stretches without snapping when something truly weird happens. And then the ultimate goal: sustained adaptability, which is all about the ability to learn and evolve from every single surprise. So the big question to take back to your own teams is this one right here. Instead of only dissecting failure, what if you spent just as much, if not more, time understanding why your systems work so incredibly well most of the time? The answer to that question might just hold the key to building systems that are not just less fragile, but are truly deeply resilient.